From ancient civilizations to the lost city of Z, we've got you covered at Brothers of the Serpent Podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. Nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau, where there are lots of dinosaur footprints and bones. Found some more dinosaur bones the other day.
All right.
Yeah. And I think we got a good show. I think Kyle's going to tell us about some physics.
Yeah, it's all materials out there. That's all there is.
That's right. And as always, we are joined by our good friend and longhead from deep beneath his secret space station, deep in secret outer space in his 3x3x3 cylinder of something, Mr. Brett England. How you doing, buddy? What's going on out there in space?
Doing great, guys. Excited for the show. Is secret outer space like inside of tiny little secret wormholes?
Oh, I assumed you were in one of the other 9 dimensions that are curled up.
Shh. Don't dox him, buddy. No one understands your mysterious ways, Watcher.
Or I guess it would be 7. We know where 3 of them are.
Yeah, do you have anything for the show? You were telling me about some interesting DMT stuff. We're going to talk about that later, maybe?
Yeah. We can totally get back into that after Kyle gets through his physics stuff. It sounds like the kind of thing that has a way of expanding.
Wow. Wait, we got to have the... right? Yeah. That's a good joke, buddy. But first, as always, we have Space Weather News. Set your alarms for dawn. Awake before sunrise? Step out and look outside to the southeast. The crescent moon and Venus are converging for a beautiful conjunction on Thursday morning, January 31st. Little more than 1 degree apart. Oh, that'll be cool. Jupiter and the red giant star Antares are nearby as well. It is a great way to begin the day. So, solar wind incoming still.
Or end your night.
Yeah, whichever one is happening. During solar minimum, long-lasting holes open in the sun's atmosphere, releasing streams of solar wind into space. One of those holes is facing Earth now, and it is a big one. Look at that picture. That is...
Whoa.
Yeah. We've seen this hole before. It opened in the summer of 2018 and has been spinning around as the sun rotates, slashing Earth with solar wind approximately once a month. The last time our planet felt its gaseous emissions, December 27th through 28th on 2018. Alaska skies exploded in green and were the best auroras of the season. The solar wind will return on January 31st or more likely February 1st, bringing with it a chance of G1 class geomagnetic storms. Arctic sky watchers should be on alert for auroras. Visibility should be good as the waning crescent moon provides dark skies for both photography and naked eye observing. That is from spaceweather.com, which is where we get all our space weather news.
So, that huge... Wait, that's a hole in the
sun's atmosphere.
in the atmosphere. So that's different than a sunspot.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a sunspot. If it were,
Yeah,
we would be
I was
totally
like...
we would be totally effed if that was a sunspot. Yeah.
Because remember when there was that huge,
Yeah.
massive sunspot that it was like...
Yeah. I remember
That thing looked crazy. That was a while back, though.
Yeah, but that's huge. That's really big.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's basically in the gaseous envelope around the sun. It's the atmosphere.
That's right.
Yeah.
So does that have anything to do with the polar vortex? It's striking.
I don't know. This is the solar vortex.
Yeah.
So it's close. All right, so I have
The polar vortex is back, and it is wreaking havoc.
Wait, wasn't the havoc always wreaked by when it collapsed? That's what's happening, right? It collapses and all those cold winds fall out over the rest of the Earth.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, polar vortex collapses.
Well, it's like, I don't know.
Killing
it's like
everyone.
this V-shaped thing. It's like bringing all this cold Arctic air, but they're saying it's like going to be colder than at the North Pole. So how is that?
No, I think it's
how's
at the
that working?
South Pole. It's colder in some of the parts of North America than it is at the South Pole, which makes kind of sense. I mean, sort of, because the South Pole's in its summer right now.
Yeah, I thought this said.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I saw that it was colder, in the latitudes of North America than it is going to be at the South Pole in Antarctica. So,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
makes a
It's
little bit
still
more sense.
really cold.
It's
I mean,
still
I
cold.
saw pictures the other day, or I guess they're today. A guy took pictures of his front door, where the hinges stick in, and they are covered in frost on the inside of his house. He's like, it's so cold outside that the frost is growing on my hinges on the inside of the house.
Yeah, that's serious.
That's freaking cold. All right, I had this story pulled up, and it's gone.
It's not that cold here.
No, it's not.
It's been pretty chilly, but I mean, not even freezing. So we're doing all right.
Yeah. Okay. So probably some of you have heard this story. Missing boy rescued in eastern North Carolina says he hung out with a bear while lost for 2 days. Hung out with. A tense 48 hours came to an end last week for a North Carolina community after a boy who vanished from his grandmother's yard was found alive. So that's another. I'm gonna go through the 411 points on this. Grandmother's yard, big. That's so many of these children disappear from their grandparents' place, which,
Yeah, grandparents already did it once. They think they got it down. They're like,
all the grandparents I know never take their eyes off the kid. I don't know.
helicopter grandparents.
That's right.
Drone grandparents.
That's right. Despite near freezing temperatures, 3-year-old Casey Hathaway managed to survive 2 days lost in a wooded area of Craven County in eastern North Carolina, with relatives calling his discovery a miracle, the Charlotte Observer reported. At the time of Casey's disappearance, he had been playing with other children in his grandmother's yard on Tuesday afternoon. Searchers located the boy late Thursday night, approximately half a mile from his grandmother's home, after receiving a tip from a local woman walking her dogs who believed she heard a child crying for his mother. Search teams responded to the woman's 911 call and found Casey a short distance away, quote, stuck in a tangle of vines and thorns, unquote. Said Craven County Sheriff Chip Hughes in a press conference shortly after the rescue. Casey was quiet after he was discovered and reportedly expressed that he wanted to watch Netflix. His mood improved once he was reunited with his sister, according to family members. So they pick him up, he's like, Netflix, please. Shortly after Casey's rescue, his aunt, Brenna Hathaway, posted on Facebook that Casey said he, quote, hung out with a bear, unquote, while he was missing. He said he hung out with a bear for 2 days, Hathaway wrote. God sent him a friend to keep him safe. The statement about the bear has attracted a lot of attention, even becoming a centerpiece for an Inside Edition report. Naturally, when something curious like this arises in relation to a disappearance, comments appearing on various articles online were rife with the usual speculations. Missing 411, Bigfoot. Show him a picture of a bear and then Sasquatch. I think you'll get a surprising answer. Others have argued that if there had actually been a bear with Casey, the animal would more likely have consumed him rather than nurture or protect. While there are some black bears in eastern North Carolina, it is a popular misconception that these animals are aggressive. They are, however, omnivorous, and studies in the last decade have shown that incidents where black bears have attacked and eaten humans generally involve male members of the species. In other words, I think they're talking about male bears.
Yeah.
Who are particularly hungry during seasons when their normal food supply is unusually scarce, like right now.
Aren't they hibernating right now?
Yeah, they should be asleep. Craven County Sheriff Chip Hughes said in an interview with WCTI News Channel 12 in New Bern that the boy didn't say, quote, how he's able to survive and all that, unquote. And that Casey, quote, did say he had a friend in the woods that was a bear that was with him. The sheriff mentioned that the bear had been with him for 2 years, although it seems evident that he meant 2 days, which is the period that Casey remained missing. Are we sure about that? No Amber Alert was issued, according to Hughes, because there was never any suspicion that the child had been a victim of kidnapping, or that a third party may have been involved with his disappearance. Of course, questions remain as to how precisely the boy was able to last 2 days in the wilderness, particularly in damp conditions and temperatures that dipped into the 20s at night. This, of course, brings us back to Casey's statements about a bear that accompanied him while he was in the forest. A GoFundMe page was set up after Casey's recovery entitled Casey and the Bear. It states that he told us that his best friend the bear was with him to keep him safe. Thanks to God mercy, he came back home alive to us alive and well. What is... Okay.
Fund me now.
Yeah, so give me money. As one would expect, this has led to a large amount of speculation about the bear, whether it existed, and if so, whether it was indeed a bear. It should first be noted that the description on the GoFundMe page, which reads, his best friend the bear, would also seem to indicate that Casey was referring to an imaginary friend, a point that we'll address in greater depth in a moment. As a matter of pure speculation, one alternative could be that Casey saw or interacted with a large dog, or perhaps had actually observed a bear at some point while he was lost. And there are, of course, the more wild speculations about this statement that insinuate Casey's bear might actually be a Sasquatch, which, as we saw earlier, presently fill the comment sections of various articles and videos appearing online. However, there is another aspect of Casey's story, what little we actually know about it at present that is, which explores a possible psychological component to his adventure alone in the wilderness. This may also be somewhat in keeping with the idea of an imaginary friend or something akin to it. I like this. This is cool. In his 2008 book, The Third Man Factor, Surviving the Impossible, author John Geiger details several instances of apparent survival against the odds in harsher extreme conditions. In many of the cases, his book outlines the survivors of such situations described having been helped or otherwise accompanied by companions that range from people and animals to sometimes little more than a sort of ghostly presence. All have escaped traumatic events only to tell strikingly similar stories of having experienced the close presence of a companion and or helper, Geiger wrote. Such stories tell of prisoners of war, aviators, astronauts, and even 9/11 survivors. There is also a very unusual case Geiger outlines which may have some relevance to Casey Hathaway's remarkable survival against the odds. In his book, Geiger discusses a 1953 incident in the Himalayas involving Hermann Bull, a renowned Austrian mountaineer. Bull was the first man to scale the Nanga Parbat, a 26,660-foot peak located in the Himalayas, making it the world's 9th tallest mountain. However, the adventure was not without incident. In his approach to the summit, Bull was forced to bed down for the night in absence of a tent, nor even a sleeping bag, in the freezing conditions on the mountain. Against all odds, he managed to survive, later telling of having, quote, an extraordinary feeling, unquote, in the sense that he was not alone. Bull's famous story of survival on Nanga Parbat shares some elements with an even stranger incident, which allegedly occurred 15 years earlier. The man identified as Captain V. D'Auvergne, who was apparently a curator for a time with the Victoria Memorial, or as primatologist John Napier called it, the unforgettable piece of Victoriana on the Maidan near Chowringtree, Calcutta in the 1930s. He told a remarkable tale about being injured while traveling through the Himalayas in 1938, at which time he was overtaken by a fierce snowstorm. Both unable to see and unfit for travel, he hunkered down into the snow best he could and tried to maintain warmth. At one point, he described seeing a very large, human-like figure emerging from the raging snowstorm, which lifted the injured man and carried him back to the rustic grotto in which it apparently dwelt. At least, so the story goes. He later immortalized the incident in a written account he published in the pages of a research society journal, claiming that his gargantuan savior had been, to again borrow John Napier's description, a human, a survivor from prehistoric ages, a descendant of an oppressed minority group called Aore, who had taken to the mountains and gone to seed, acquiring gigantic proportions and a number of bestial adaptations in the process.
Wow, that's crazy.
The obvious implication here is that he claimed to have been rescued by a Yeti, the mythical abominable snowman of the Himalayas. We are left with a couple of interpretive assessments here. Could it be that this man's story details an actual series of events, however distorted they may have ended up being? Or might the wounded and famished traveler have suffered a sort of hallucination, one where he recalled a strange creature assisting him? In light of the second alternative, taking for granted that his outlandish story might nonetheless have a grain of truth to it, the later experiences of Herman Bull do put it in a slightly more interesting light. In essence, was there really a beast that rescued D'Auvergne, or was it merely his own imagination that sheltered him from that raging storm, one which otherwise may have claimed his life? This once again brings us back to the story of Casey and his bear, an odd and seemingly nonsensical footnote in a young child's recollection of how he survived 48 hours alone in freezing temperatures. If we give consideration to Geiger's third man factor here, the story may have less to do with an actual bear and everything to do with the notion that there are faculties of the human mind that are capable of extraordinary things, especially under harsh or life-threatening conditions. So that was from mysteriousuniverse.org, which is a great website for finding more interesting speculations and other things, discussions on kind of mysterious events like this. But I have to say, I was disappointed in them. Number one, in not detailing why it's called the third man effect or third man And it's because of that term originally came from the journals of Henry Shackleton and the first mate of his ship. They were the guys that were always trying to get to the North Pole. And on one of their most famous expeditions, their ship got trapped in the ice and eventually was completely surrounded and totally encased. Right, as the water, they got in between all these different flows of ice, and then they were surrounded, and then it froze over and just trapped the ship and started to crush it. Right.
Yes.
So Henry and his first mate, the rest of the men stayed on the ship. Henry and his first mate jumped off the ship onto the ice and walked all the way back to the most, to the closest freaking station it was hundreds of miles away across ice.
Yeah.
In the north, like Arctic Ocean or whatever. In their journals of that journey, which was incredibly dangerous, and they ended up making it, they both write about a third man who was with them, who kept making sure that they didn't fall asleep, for too long, would wake them up and be like, come on, we got to go, always encouraging them or whatever, and there was no third man with them ever. So it's called the third man effect, that there was this sort of ghostly and yet totally tangible to them at the time presence of a third person who was constantly making sure, don't go to sleep, or you've got to get up now, you got to start moving or you're going to die, So, and it's in both of their journals independently that both of them thought there was a third person with them for long parts of the journey. So,
yeah, that's crazy.
So it's called the third man effect, and there's many, many other crazy stories about the third man. I mean, there are people that have survived avalanches. I read about one guy who survived. Everyone else in his climbing team, died in this avalanche, and he actually had 2 broken femurs. He was not going to walk. Can you imagine, managed to hand crawl with 2 broken legs and a whole bunch of other injuries all the way down to a ranger station over 20 miles or something like that. And everyone was just like, holy crap, how did you do this? And he kept, when we looked at the hospital, he kept asking where the woman was that had helped him the whole way. There was never a woman, of course. Third man is not always male. So.
Yeah. You gotta be, it's 21st century here.
Yeah, it's current date. It's not always male.
I guess the way it works is if you're not in a dire situation where you're about to die, but you're in a real cushy situation where everything's fine, the third man is always evil and trying to kill you. Because those are the only hallucinations that I've ever had. When I was a kid, it's like the most vivid one that I remember. It's I wake up in the middle of the night in a nice bedroom in a nice house.
Yeah,
with a nice
totally
family.
Not in a life-threatening
totally
situation.
not in a life-threatening situation.
And then suddenly something.
And everything's red, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And then I get up and I come out of my room, and there's these 3 boys that are older than me and big, and they start chasing me, trying to kill me. I'm running all around the house, freaking out. And
well, that's totally different. That's the 3 boys effect.
yeah, they're jerks.
That's right.
You don't want to meet them in a red alley.
Yeah, so I don't know what to say about Casey Hathaway's story. It's very interesting. It has many 411 aspects to it, but I look through what people are saying, and people are like, "Oh yeah, there's other instances of bears, children saying that they were helped by bears." I'm like, "Yeah," and they're all in the 411 books, every single one. There aren't that many. There are some, but all of them are in the 411 books because they all fit the profile of other profile points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's historical precedent." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a strange one," and it's. Yeah, but people are like, well, bears, or I guess it was you that was saying that there's this thing about people being raised, children being raised by.
I mean, yeah, I've just heard there are these random stories or legends or whatever about children being raised by obviously pack of wolves or something. Yeah. And you're like, what?
Princess Mononoke. Wait, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, animals doing weird things with children.
Sorry, guys, I have a cough today. Bad.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any of them are true, but there are quite a few of these stories about animals treating children, almost taking them in, the mother animals.
Yeah.
Taking in these other infants.
Yeah.
Infants, air quotes, but
right.
kids.
It is.
So I'm not saying that it happens, but I don't think it's impossible
Yeah.
for an animal to actually help out an infant or a child.
Yeah.
But it seems like it would be extremely rare.
Yeah.
And kind of crazy.
Yeah. And still 20 degrees below, or 20 degrees temperatures overnight. 2 nights. It's like, even if you had a bear, it seems like you'd still have frostbite or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the other problem with these stories that I always have. It's just like, I want more details. Like,
Yeah.
what else did the kid say? Are you still asking him?
Right.
You know, what did the bear look like? Where did he go? Did he take him into a cave? What kind of food did he give him?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how did he survive?
Right.
You know,
why was he tangled up in?
in briar? I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like
too.
the bear was like, okay, go home now.
Yeah, and shoved him into a briar thicket and said, "Stay here." And that's the other thing is like bears are all hibernating. You know, like if you wake up a bear from hibernation, it's not happy.
Yeah.
It's very mad.
So I have a 3-year-old, and he knows his animals.
Right.
I mean, he.
But what would he
Broke
say?
your smoke.
But what would he say if he saw something that was nothing he had ever seen before, but it was close? It was.
I don't think he's just like so particular.
Yeah.
Like,
Why don't you
even-
show him a picture of Sasquatch to see what he says it is.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We should do it. Let's go get him. He's still awake.
We should totally do it.
Let's definitely do that. All right. Coming up, special guest on the show.
It's a genius idea.
Yeah, so I better shut up. I'm not going to talk about how he wouldn't mistake it. I don't want to be wrong. But I think there have been times when there's a picture or, say, a real animal, like in real life, and I'll point it out and say, like, that's actually one of these, but it doesn't, you know, like, it doesn't look like it what he would recognize from, say, cartoon pictures or
Right.
stuff. But we've made sure to, like, let him watch a lot of real nature
Yeah.
videos so that he can recognize the real animal as opposed to these. That was one of my big things. I'm like, let's not always be showing him cartoon animals.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what if he saw something that sort of was very hairy and kind of resembled a bear, but spoke? Would he might think it was a bear because of cartoons of bears that talk?
Maybe. That's a good point. But that's what I was trying to say is that, like, right from the beginning when he started to be able to recognize things and speak
Yeah.
and, like, kind of name them or whatever, I was like, I would look through the books or whatever, like, that people would buy them and stuff and see if, like these...
Yeah, these aren't
These
really
don't
bears.
look anything like a bear.
Yeah.
Like, this is not...
Yeah.
I don't, you know, so we tried to introduce all of, you know, the real pictures and plenty of that, and he can identify it, and he knows, like, I mean, he knows more animal names than I do. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because it's one of his, you know, he's maybe just different. I don't know. I only have one, but
Yeah.
he's like, he wants to see more and more and learn more and more.
The other thing I was thinking of is like teddy bears. Like people have personalized. In other words, they're sort of a teddy bear doesn't look like an actual bear, right? It has like arms and legs. Bears don't really have arms and legs.
It kind of looks, they're kind of cartoonish,
Right.
Yes.
You know,
So if you
their
had a-
faces are a little more human.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah. So I was wondering if like if there was a giant, you know, so have you seen those huge teddy bears?
Like we have 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the gigantic teddy bears, if there was something like that that had arms and that's could, you know, that sat like a person does, and I don't know.
Yeah. No.
I'm gonna call it a bear, you know. So yeah, it's a strange story. I did like that they took it into the third man effect angle. I don't like the fact that they think the third man effect is just purely psychological. That's ridiculous to me.
Who's doing it? How are they getting there?
What?
How is somebody just showing up in the
Well,
in
it's
the
more
Arctic?
spiritual. I mean, like, how do it's named after 2 men who saw both, a third figure who they both thought was the same person. That doesn't make it seems hard for that to be psychological or whatever.
So we should get into the physics of that. It's one of the things I've been thinking about too. Like we can talk more about it later, coming up on a break. But the idea that, so if you want to say it's not psychological, that there's something actually there.
Well, what I mean is that Okay, yeah. That there's something actually there. I mean, like the guy who had both legs broken or whatever was being pulled, according to his account, in some cases.
Right.
So if you're like, that's purely psychological, is like he was making that story up post facto, or however you say it, like after the fact.
Yeah.
You know, like, no, I wasn't dragging myself by my fingernails. Somebody was pulling me. Somebody kept waking me up. Somebody kept shivving me along. Somebody kept poking me in the side. So I guess you could assume that those were all psychological. But when it's two people, it's called the third man effect because there were two people initially. That's weird.
Yeah. I agree with that. I totally agree. It's weird. But it's also weird to think about something being, let's say, supernatural or spiritual. But if we can see it and interact with it, then it can't only be that.
Right.
It has to be physical in some way because we're the materials of our body are interacting with it.
Yeah.
There's interaction if we can see it because the light is doing something. The light's interacting with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just psychological. If
it's spiritual.
If materials are not interacting with it in any way, then it can't really pull you.
Right.
Otherwise, it would be interacting with you physically.
Right. Supernatural does not mean not physical.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just like getting into the nuts and bolts of this. So like if it either is totally psychological or it's physical, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can't be pulled by something that's psychological.
Right.
So if the story is true and the guy was being pulled, then it's a physical thing.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah, you can't be poked by something that's not really there.
right, and you can't really see something that's
Yeah.
not really there.
Right. Yeah.
If you are, it's psychological.
Yeah.
It's not actually light reflecting off of the thing and hitting your eyeballs.
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of what I was. So,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
and that's kind of a fun thing to think about. Like, is
Yeah.
there a way that something that isn't?
But you can be poked by stuff you can't see. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's paranormal. You know, just like getting hit in the head by a thrown penny by a poltergeist or whatever. It's like.
But the poltergeist must be interacting
In some
with
way,
the physical
it's
world in order to
interacting,
throw
yeah.
the penny.
But you can't see it.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to see it.
Yeah.
It's physical if it's throwing a penny.
Right.
It's interacting. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's what I think is interesting about the whole topic because is there something that can suddenly be physical and then not?
Like manifest fully physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
That's hard to say. I mean,
right.
is it theoretically possible?
I don't know. I don't think anybody has a theory for that.
Star Trek theory. It's called a replicator, bro.
I mean, there's a theory of wormholes in which you can, basically you could warp space-time in such a way that you can go from one place to another without actually having to pass through all of the space and time between
Right.
the 2 points. So technically, the point which you arrive at, you become physical suddenly when you
Yeah.
were not there before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the only problem with the wormhole idea is that
It would destroy the entire solar system. if
well,
you
they
showed it
think,
like that.
that, like, a lot of people think, and I mean physicists and people who worry about wormholes think that most likely any type of thing that would pass through it would make disturb it so much that it would collapse.
Close, yeah. You'd have to hold it open by some external energy force or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Maintain the walls in some way by some...
And you'd have to have enough energy to
Right, it'd be
equal the
ridiculous.
matter of an
it'd be
entire
ridiculous amount of
galaxy or
energy,
something.
Yeah.
So maybe,
Yeah.
maybe there's other ways to achieve that. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I guess the question then becomes like, are we talking about something that's just beyond us technologically? You know, are there manifestations that can also interact? So, like, one of the things that Dr. Jacques Vallée talks about with UFOs is, number one, he's like, look, there's obviously a psychological component to these things, right? But there's obviously also a physical interaction that they mess with radar systems.
Yeah.
So you can't say it's one or the, it's, you know, like you can't say it's 100% nuts and bolts because people see them in their minds before they get here in some cases and all that kind of weird thing, right? But on the other hand, we can see them on radar. So they're both. And they can also vanish and reappear as...
Yeah, they interact in strange ways.
Right. Right. So
one of the other things that I've been looking into a little more recently is string theory. And that is, like, strings, I don't understand the math, so don't even, I'm just going to basically repeat things that I've heard said that I don't understand. But that string theory only works out.
I think everybody does that with physics.
Yeah. String theory only works out in 10 dimensions. There has to be 10 dimensions, right? And what they're trying to figure out is, well, because we only know of like 3, right?
Where are the other ones?
The other ones might be like
little bitty tiny.
curled up, right?
Curled up.
The dimensions are curled up, and there's got to be some type of geometry to the other dimensions. And so they start out with a handful of various, like they're doing all this math, right?
Yeah.
And they're working out like the possible shapes or the geometry of these dimensions. And they end up with, a small set, and they start trying to solve for these problems or whatever.
Take care.
Then it turns out like, oh wait, we just found, like, some graduate students or whatever, they find some more possible geometry, shapes.
Yeah.
And then they end up finding more and more and more, and now there's like
21 or
500 billion of them or something. So there's far too many possibilities to even begin to calculate all of them and figure out which ones are correct.
Yeah.
Or
the shapes.
Does everything else that's been shown by experiment or whatever match the data of this particular set of shapes?
Right.
Right. So now that there's so many possible shapes that it could be, there's got to be some other way they're going to have to solve for this, whatever these dimensions are. But the interesting thing to me was, if there are all these other dimensions that are curled up, and there could be other universes in a sense that have different shape or different
geometrical topographies. Yeah.
Different dimensions are open.
Yeah.
And say ours number 1, 2, and 3 are curled up.
Yeah.
It would be, and so then I started thinking, like, man, like, what if their whole, like, that is what the spirit realm, quote unquote, is these other.
The other world has 1, 2, and 3 curled up.
They're in our universe, but they're in the curled dimensions, and so their whole way of travel and time and everything is just totally different to them.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
I don't know if that works out really. Some of you string theorists can, script herp me, but I'm just getting into it. I've always just been like, blah. Never really gotten into that one. But I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. Well, my cat appears to understand string theory perfectly. He could take any giant knot of string and totally convert it into another completely different giant knot of string without ever untangling the first knot. It's fantastic. There has to be.
Yeah.
He has to be passing it through curled dimensions.
Yeah. Cats definitely understand.
Also, earbuds, when put in your pocket, operate on those curled dimensions because you pull them out and they're totally fucked. There's no possible way. They become warped and curled up on each other. The only explanation is that they pass through all those dimensions while in your pocket.
That's right. All right, we're gonna curl up this first segment, and we'll be back.
That's right.
Stand down or die.
Touring the universe with our snake thoughts? I don't know. We're sitting in the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, touring the universe with our snake thoughts.
Yeah.
And we have a special guest coming on in a few minutes after his bath. It's very important.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes when I'm touring the universe with my snake thoughts, I feel like I'm going in circles.
yeah, me too.
No. Little
Yeah.
Ouroboros joke there for you.
We will be have a visit from our resident animal expert to identify the most famous Sasquatch photography ever taken.
Yeah. The Patterson-Gimlin footage. The famous still from the Patterson-Gimlin footage, which is the only it's the closest to the real thing we can get here, folks. And obviously, nobody has a real picture of Bigfoot, as far as we know. So,
But I'm guessing that the answer is going to be gorilla, because it's. I mean, if there's a type of animal it looks the most like, that's what it looks like.
yeah. Yep. Yeah. So if we had one where it was not walking, like it was in a cave,
Yeah.
on all fours or whatever, who knows? But yeah, that's the best one. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I'll probably say gorilla too. But who knows? You might know that gorillas
So
have
there
breast plates.
are there any kids that tell stories about being taken care of by gorillas?
No, they say hairy man. So, which is a gorilla.
That reminds me of that. What was that gorilla that like snatched that kid in the zoo and like was just chilling with him?
Oh.
And the zookeepers ended up like taking him out, taking
Yeah.
the gorilla out to get the kid.
Oh yeah, he became a meme. I can't.
Yeah.
What his name was.
It was like Majambi or something like that.
Yeah.
Mohambre.
Harambe.
Harambe.
Harambe remembers. I saw lots of those memes.
I mean, that sucks they had to do it, but you know,
I cannot
Yeah.
do that.
when people are like, you didn't have to do that. You didn't know what they really had to do.
Right. Yeah. Are you a Harambe keeper? Didn't think so. Yeah, I remember seeing the video.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
He just like grabbed him by the foot and just drug him across the
Yeah.
bonk, 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 bonk the whole way. That was freaky, man. Yeah, a gorilla took care of me in the woods.
Yeah.
Right. You're all beat up. I mean, was this kid? Did the kid even have any?
I saw a picture of him.
And they didn't say anything about him having like hypothermia or anything.
Yeah.
Something took care of him.
Right. And he wasn't hungry or thirsty.
Yeah.
You talk about Netflix. Like,
Yeah. He was hungry for Netflix.
yeah.
Stand down and
Because
die.
everybody knows Sasquatch don't have an internet connection.
Freaking Sasquatch doesn't even have Wi-Fi in its
Yeah.
freaking cave, man.
I'm glad the kid was okay though.
Yeah.
That's a wild story.
It's. I do think it's weird that he was trapped in the thicket too. There's, of course, that's just
How
me.
old was
Like,
he?
3.
Okay, yeah. Well, that happens. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Soul's gotten trapped.
And he was crying or whatever.
When
Yeah.
we were like go hiking around in the woods, he'll get trapped.
Right.
It's happened.
Yeah.
And then he's like really upset about it. I'm like, you can do it.
Yeah.
You know?
But if you guys just went inside and started cooking dinner, he would show up eventually. Get out of there. He isn't gonna sit there and cry. I mean, he might do it for a while, but eventually he'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
no one's coming to help me.
That's right.
I've got to get out.
And this kid just so happened to have somebody come and help him.
Yeah.
So.
And he was sitting in there crying in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
But it was 2 days later. That's
I mean, hell, I've been trapped in some of the crazy woods out here
yeah.
for a while.
You're walking around and you suddenly look around. And you're like, shit, trapped. I'm trapped.
How did I get here? Hope there's not a smiley face nearby. I don't know where I am. I'm sorry, that's a terrible joke.
Yeah. Too soon.
God. Oh, man, delete that. Edit that out.
So what I was getting at with the thickets and stuff is that I've read lots of.
Are there 411 cases involving thickets, or are there 411 cases involving thickets? What are you trying to say?
Watcher.
That's
Aren't
what I
there
thought.
411 cases involving thickets and thorns?
That's what I thought. I thought that I immediately thought of berry picking, right? Like he's in a thicket of,
Right.
of there. You know, it's in the wintertime, so there's no berries.
Right.
but
So the
they're like,
frickin'
yeah,
sheriff doesn't know
this
there's
is where
berries.
they always come. So I'll just put the kid back over here.
The sheriff just didn't know they were berries because it's just thorns right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Sasquatch did.
Right.
He's like, they always come here to pick these.
Yeah.
So I'll just stick it
Pisses
there.
me off most of the time.
Stay there. Just kind of wrap him up in them. They'll find you.
Yeah. Yep. But there are lots of stories, people. Well, I just read lots of accounts of this kind of thing involving the thickets where people get dragged into them and then left there.
Yeah.
Strange faces.
And they do say some weird things, 3-year-olds. They have strange
Okay, now they're coming out.
imaginations.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
We're about to find out.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
Hey!
He's our special guest. Hey, Soul.
They're right here.
What animal is this?
No, a gorilla.
The gorilla.
But what do you mean? Does he really look like a gorilla? Yeah. What about this one?
What?
What does that look like? That's what I would say. I didn't know.
Does he look like a bear?
No.
Okay.
No. Doesn't look like a bear. One Sasquatch, folks.
High five.
It does look like
Oh, you're right. He doesn't look like
He
a
doesn't
bear.
look like a bear. You're totally right.
All right, thanks, buddy. You are the resident expert. Good night.
Well, there you have it, folks. Wasn't Sasquatch.
Yeah, so I showed him the original picture.
Well, at least if Soul was taken by Sasquatch, he would not call it a bear.
Yeah. Someone took care of me. Who was it? I don't know. A gorilla. He's got. Yeah. There's some uncertainty there.
Yeah.
That's good.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's good. Proud of him.
All right. Yeah. Because he's right. Sasquatch isn't a gorilla. I don't know. A gorilla. You're totally right, buddy. It's the closest thing. Okay. What do you got, physics-wise? What are we doing?
So I've been looking. Well, I've really just been listening to some interviews. One is, let me pull up the guy's name. Thorne is his last name. He wrote. Did he write the Timescapes and whatever? There's a book that you had. I think this guy wrote it. Hold on. Kip Thorne.
Oh, yeah.
Like Black Holes and Timescapes or something. Did he write
Maybe.
that?
I don't know.
All right, let me get rid of these Sasquatch pics. Go back to the Watcher. Kip Thorne. So he's the guy. He's been working on.
That's Thorne.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's been working on gravitational waves. I believe which Einstein theorized, right? That they existed. This guy's been working on that for about 50 years. So he pretty much is the main influence behind the LIGO experiment.
Yeah.
The LIGO team, the LIGO project,
Which is an acronym that stands for.
lasers, and we go fast. I don't know what it stands for,
Light
but it involves lasers.
Yeah, light something detection something.
It's probably light and gravity or gravitational and whatever. But I guess it's pretty recent. They within a couple of years, I think they.
The laser interferometer gravitational wave observator.
Yeah.
Observator.
Laser interferometer, which is to measure interference.
Yes.
Gravitational wave observatory.
Yeah.
Observatory, perhaps.
No, it is the observatory. It's a freaking superhero.
Yeah.
The observatory, you can see everything.
Yeah, so there was this theory of the gravitational waves, and this guy worked on it. He worked on relativity for a long time, and trying to figure out how to do an experiment to
Yeah.
test relativity, right? Like this is
Yeah.
like you have all these theories, and then you have to figure out how to test them. So that was one of the things that he was trying to do, is figure out how do we test these theories, and then now we need to design a interferometer gravitational wave observator in order to test this theory of gravitational waves. They are not gravity. Okay?
Right.
They are waves, oscillations caused by
Extreme gravitational events.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they built this machine, I guess it is, and it's got basically a set of mirrors. It's 4 mirrors, and each mirror is weighs like 100 pounds or something, and they're near perfect mirrors, and they have them mounted by quartz fiber. They're hanging by quartz fiber, and I assume that the quartz fiber is there to detect any type of fluctuation or motion in the mirror itself, because the quartz is basically
because you gotta cancel out seismic
all the noise of just people walking around
rumbling and everything. Yeah. Thunder.
Cars, thunder, weather, all that stuff. But I'm assuming that the quartz fiber is, because it's piezoelectric, any stress in the crystals will send signals.
Yeah.
Right? Now this may be one way where they're able to test the difference in the mirrors or whatever. They're able to cancel out all of the motion, the non-gravitational wave motion of the mirrors.
Yeah.
And then they're basically shooting lasers down these pairs of mirrors, and the lasers are, running parallel to each other, I believe. And it's a pretty long distance. I can't remember how far the mirrors are apart. It's a big area, and a long distance.
Yeah, they're in tunnels or something like that.
Yeah, in tubes.
Yeah.
And basically there's like 100,000 different instruments to detect motion in this thing.
Yeah.
Because of all of the things that they have to cancel out. And then they ran all of these simulations and everything of what they might see when gravitational waves happen, right? Or if gravitational waves came by that were the right frequency or whatever that the machine can detect. And they basically knew the range of frequency that they would be able to detect with it. Extremely high frequency. So lo and behold, sometime after they built it, not very long, they detected some motion. And they ended up triangulating, I suppose, the direction that it came from, and
It was a neutron star collision.
it was 2 black holes.
Oh.
Yeah, they did detect some neutron star collisions too.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing was 2 black holes collided, and each one was about 30 solar masses.
Yeah.
And so the waves that were propagating out of that, he describes as a stretching or a sort of compression and rarefaction of
space
space
itself.
and time.
Yeah.
So these areas are perpendicular to the wavefront. They're not like waves on water. They're not ripples like on the surface of water that you see. They're their compression and then like rarefaction, vacuum of literally space and time. So that for the moment that the compressed wavefront passes the detector, the lasers are closer together than they are in the rarefied side of the wave. They're further apart.
Right.
Or whatever. And they're extremely sensitive, so they will actually fluctuate and move with this wave action, which normal matter, just like your body, won't move. There's too much inertia, it's too much mass to move your body. So I guess it somehow interacts with laser light itself and makes the lasers further apart or closer together because they're nearly massless.
Yeah.
Which is freaking awesome. And the other interesting thing about the experiment was they had these blind, I don't remember what they called them, but the team, there would be certain people selected in the team randomly to go and process a simulation in the machine. And nobody else in the team knew about it. Or there was like directors that knew about it.
Yeah.
that knew who was randomly selected to run these random simulations. And the rest of the team would be like, we got a detection.
Oh, okay.
So then they'd go, and so they were always thinking these are simulations, like these are fake, you know.
Yeah.
Like everybody in the team knew that this was part of the process, so they were always like, these are fake.
Yeah.
And so their process, they're doing all this data, you know, trying to figure out what exactly happened with the machine or whatever, and they do all this work, and then they find out, oh, it was a simulation. So they get one, and they're like, yeah, they worked on it for about a month, and then they found out that was not a simulation. So that's like pretty cool. Like they've been working and all
Everyone's
thinking,
assuming it's a
they're
simulation.
they're all thinking it's a simulation, and they find out it wasn't. And they're like, oh, that was real. So it's a pretty cool little story.
Very Ender's Game.
Yeah. But one of the reasons I'm really interested in this is because this idea I've been thinking about, you know, we've talked about the redshift, the problem with the redshift idea and you know, the dark energy and the universe expanding everywhere and the expansion accelerating, and we're getting further and further apart from things that we're further and further apart from at a greater and greater rate of acceleration. What the hell is going on? So this idea I started thinking about was I like symmetry in physics. So I'm looking for how does this all... There seems like if there's going to be this rapid expansion out in empty space, that there's got to be compression somewhere else. And Russ and I have talked about this quite a bit since I started thinking about it. And like one of the ideas is that if space... First of all, we're talking about space-time. Like, it's not just space, as Einstein theorized, that it's actually space-time. It's a fabric that encompasses both things. So if you have expansion of space, you're having expansion of time as well. And that is sort of easy to see in the fact that the distance, these great distances that we are from these galaxies and stars out there, we're actually seeing the light that is them billions of years ago, right? The light that we're receiving is billions of years old.
Yeah.
So we're not actually seeing the star as it is at the moment. So in some sense, time is directly related to spatial differences. Time differences are related to spatial differences. So I thought it would be cool if space and time were also able to be compressed, and that there was sort of a symmetry in the expansion of the universe in the compression side. So you have sort of like an equilibrium. So where would the space be compressing? And the idea was that it should be compressing in these gravity wells, like the stars and planets, whatever. So one of the ideas about that is that according to physics, we can't really tell the difference between, like, the force you feel on your body due to gravity is indistinguishable from the force you would feel on your body due to acceleration, to your own acceleration. So I love that idea. Like, if you were in a spaceship and the spaceship is accelerating, the push you're feeling against the back of the ship or your chair or whatever is indistinguishable from the force of gravity.
Yeah.
And so physicists talk about gravity in the terms of acceleration,
Yeah.
right? The fact that we're standing on Earth,
It's because we're constantly under gravitic acceleration.
That's
9
right.
point whatever meters squared.
yeah, and there's two ways to look at that acceleration. One way, and this is a typical way when you're talking about gravity, is that you are actually being accelerated down towards the center of the Earth.
Yeah.
But another way to look at it is that the surface of the planet, for example, is being accelerated up, and so you're being squashed against it. Right? Now we know that our planet is not exploding, right? So what if what if space can be in motion, passing by matter at such a rate that you would actually feel like a guy in a spaceship being squashed against the back of the spaceship? So that, like, I guess the idea is that at the center of these gravity wells is extremely highly compressed space that is flooding out in every direction from that point. And we notice that motion of space time basically as this accelerated force
Towards the point that where it's coming out.
Yeah, we notice it as being pulled towards the point, but it's really the actual space and time accelerating away from that point.
Yeah.
And then I had this really built up in my mind like a couple of weeks ago. It's a little. I'm struggling to get through this idea right now, but that was the basic idea.
But then you have to also tie in time. That the same thing is happening
Right.
with time.
So we were thinking in terms of, let's say you poke a hole in an air compressor. The air coming out of that hole that you put in it, is it even on the outside of the air compressor is still highly compressed. It's hauling ass, and it's the air molecules are extremely compressed. But as it moves out away from the compressor and gets more and more space and is pushing away from the other molecules, it's PSI, pounds per square inch, is getting less and less and less,
Yeah.
and it's trying to reach equilibrium. So I was kind of imagining every gravity well similar to that orifice in the air compressor, where it's all moving out. And so the further away you get from the gravity well, you're noticing this sort of decompression. And then far out and away from it, it's basically going the opposite direction. That's the expanding space.
Yeah.
And then the time idea was kind of, I had kind of melded that one in there as a totally different, like I was looking at time separately. Like, okay, well, what is compressed time? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And I'd come up with a couple of different ideas about it, but then I realized, like, well, wait a minute, the space and time thing they're supposed to be the same. They are one thing. So I kind of dropped that other analogy of time, the time compression idea that I had. But in terms of what we notice, like with, like take a black hole, for example. When, there's these simulations or whatever of like the ship going near the event horizon and circling the black hole.
Yeah.
And then when it comes back, there's the time dilation is just insane, right? Like it's
Time dilation during apogee or whatever. When
Yeah.
it's closest to it.
when it's closest to it.
Is ridiculous, yeah.
So that the person in the spaceship doesn't experience as much time as the people far away from it. They may age like millions of years.
Right. To their perspective, it takes the ship
Millions of years to go around the
slingshot
black
around
hole.
the black hole. Yeah.
Right, so it kind of suggests, and then at the same time, you have this crazy gravitic force, right? There's all this mass, and it's shoved out into this tiny little point in the black hole or whatever. We don't even really know what the hell it is.
Yeah.
There's, like, one way that Kip Thorne talks about the black holes is that there is no matter. It's not made of matter.
Yeah.
Whatever's in there.
Right.
And so this collision of these two black holes that they detected
Not
was
matter as we know it anyway.
No.
There's no way.
It's highly compressed space and time.
Yeah.
And so what he describes that collision of the black holes as is a crazy storm of space and time fluctuations. So there's highly compressed time and highly expanded time. There's just all this. It's like a freaking time storm, dude.
Yeah.
That's freaking badass. So yeah, that it kind of gives you this idea that if you're going around this thing and to you it's relative, like you don't seem to notice all this time. Well, you're in this highly compressed area of space and time. Whereas the observer outside of that it's seemingly taking the millions of years for you to pass through it because of the difference in the compression. So I assume that living in highly compressed time seems totally normal to you because
Yeah, you can't tell.
you can't tell because it's relative
Yeah.
to your perspective. But to being in a less time compressed area, basically whoever's if you're able to observe someone in a compressed area of time, they seem to be basically paused.
Stuck in glue. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving extremely slowly. So there's all this kind of stuff with this idea that I'm trying to work out. Like I'm trying to look at redshift, this idea of redshift, the idea of the distances of these incredible distances of these large structures in the universe, are they really that far away?
Yeah.
Or is the expanded space between us really not quite what it seems? Like, in other words, is that distance not really that distance?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, obviously,
in other words, the light is passing through variously compressed or rarefacted areas of space, and thus making it look like distances
extremely great. Yeah.
because of our measuring conventions.
Right. Now we've talked about the redshift problem and looking more into it, figured out what's really going on is they're using the when they measure the light coming from a star, they can actually see through how do they do it? I can't remember what it's called. Refraction of the light.
Yeah.
And there will be these dark spots in the
Right.
color spectrum.
Absorption spectrums, yeah.
Yes, and those dark spots line up with the frequency of absorption of
Various elements.
So they'll notice that the absorption lines are slightly shifted. All of them are slightly shifted off higher or lower in frequency of whatever, say, hydrogen. They know hydrogen absorbs this frequency of light, and then they know helium absorbs this other frequency.
Yeah.
Well, there's two lines that are really close to hydrogen and helium, but they're shifted down in the spectrum to a slightly lower frequency. So we know that there aren't elements out there that actually absorb those frequencies exactly like hydrogen and helium. So they say, well, that's hydrogen and helium, but the light is red shifted. So there are lower frequencies.
Or it's unknown elements, and they just don't know.
Yeah, or it's some element that's extremely close to the resonant frequency of hydrogen and also the resonant frequency of helium.
Yeah.
But it's not those things, which seems extremely unlikely. Because, I mean, we've had these building blocks, it's like you add, a proton and a neutron and an electron or whatever, and it becomes this other thing, right?
Right here.
Right here in our specifically compressed space-time. All right, I'm gonna keep trying to hack away at this. We're gonna take another break.
Freaking science hacks in here.
I'm really just trying to do my best job to trust these materialist reductionist physicists and what they say they've experimented with, and they're pretty adamant about that they have done these experiments and they know these certain laws.
Yeah.
But there are these other things that they're like, well, our theories don't work. Yeah, I mean, they mostly work, but they don't totally work. So I'm always looking for what's a new theory that also aligns with all of the empirical data of the experiments and trusting that these guys build some badass machines and have repeated their experiments, and they pretty much kind of know what they've detected. So it's like, it's fun for me to come up with these weird theories and try to see if I can fit them into all the data, mold them a little bit here. That doesn't work with the redshift, with the idea. Like, how can I make this work with what we know about gravity? So that's just what I'm doing here. And,
doing a good job. It's good.
And this guy, Kip Thorne, he says that space and time can be compressed. So I was like, hell yeah. That's why I'm talking about him. All right. We'll be back.
We are back. Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies, where there are no degrees, just continuing education and certificates of total ignorance. And we're talking about space.
Yeah. Cosmology. It's a huge subject. Okay, so this is kind of a bumpy ride, and I appreciate you guys dealing with this whole process here. There was a couple of things that I wanted to go over because we talked a lot of just talked a lot of shit about him on the podcast, like the redshift problem. And so that one idea with the, what do they call it, spectrograph or whatever, I don't remember what they call it, where they measure, you know, what, in order to look at the gases or whatever are in a body from far away.
Yeah, it's
Spectrography or something like that.
Yeah.
So that is one of the main reasons why they say it's redshifted, because these dark lines that all in ratios to each other line up with all these elements that we know of.
Yeah.
But they're shifted down, all the same amount.
Right.
So the logical assumption is it's redshifted, it's traveling away from us, there's a Doppler effect in the light.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty legit.
Yeah.
Now, is it because they're actually accelerating away from us? I don't know. What if this idea of compressed and expanding space-time is the reason for this apparent Doppler? That's the reason I'm bringing this up. So, and I haven't really worked this out yet. I'm trying to figure out how it would work. Like if we imagine light as a constant, you know, it's going to have a like whatever frequency is being emitted, it's going to have a regular period in the waveform, and it's going to be traveling at a fixed speed. And if it is massless, then it will be affected by the expanding and compressing space, which is why they could detect the gravitational waves in the laser.
Yeah.
Because the laser will fluctuate with this expansion and compression of space. Right? So when that fluctuation happens, let's say the light leaves a highly compressed area of space and enters this vacuous, rarefied area of space-time. Does the wavelength change? Right? Does the frequency change and the speed remain the same? That I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I don't know how it would work. So, but that's one of the ideas that I was thinking, like, could be the cause of these redshifts, because this light that is traveling through these expanding areas of space.
Well, I mean, I still have a problem with the frequency absorption problem too, because I mean, like, how do you know, it's passing through near space as well. So, how do you tell where the absorption frequency is? Like, if it's redshifted because it's emitted from something far away that's traveling away from us, right? And then there's an absorption frequency that happens with hydrogen. Well, where does the redshift occur that shifts it down? I mean, it would be shifted down because it passed through hydrogen way far away from us? Or only passed through hydrogen when it was way over there, and so by the time it gets to us, it's down?
No,
like, does it pass through hydrogen close to us, and then it now like absorbs that frequency because it's been shifted?
So there's just like cold hydrogen out there in the vacuum
Yeah.
that the light is passing through and thereby being absorbed.
Yeah.
So like there's enough of it to.
That's what I mean.
So when you look at the star, and there's light coming from the star, but there's this blank black spot from hydrogen and these other elements. What is the star made of? Right. The idea is that it's telling you this is the reason why that light's not coming.
It's because
from
the star itself was absorbing it?
Yeah, the star is made of all this of these things, which is why that light, that specific frequency of light, is not being emitted.
But there's hydrogen everywhere. Is there
I'm
just
not disagreeing with that.
It's not enough?
I don't know.
I mean, like,
Can we do it with our own sun?
no, I don't know. Is there an absorption frequency from our sun?
Be sure, but I don't know. I haven't looked it up, but there should
I'm
be.
just saying, like,
there
if
should be if the theory is the same. I mean, the light from our sun would be darker in that area of whatever matter constitutes, whatever elements
Yeah.
constitutes it, because they're going to be absorbing that frequency of vibration.
Right.
Perhaps. I don't know. What happens when you excite a
So this-
hydrogen atom enough to get it to release a photon? What color is it? I don't know these answers. I don't know the answers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so the assumption is that all the absorption happens at the source. That's the assumption. None of it happens in the intervening space at all. Unless it's passing through a nebula or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
obviously
sure that there's some correction for absorption, but I mean, if you can see clearly, you can see the star, then you know that there's not too much shit in the way,
Well, hydrogen gas.
or at least there wasn't 100 million years ago, whenever that light first left it. Because now there might be some massive thing in front of it.
He says it's red.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so this is what I'm trying to do here is like I'm fine with that. You still have this problems with these things. I'm not disputing that because I'm basically, this is what I was saying. I'm trusting that these guys know what they're talking about when it comes to their experiments and the empirical data that they have due to that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I will say, all right, cool. They say it matches our theory, but our theory doesn't match all these other things,
Yeah.
right? So I'm thinking, could there be another theory that also matches the data? So that this spectrography that they're doing that does show these dark lines, it really is those elements that thing was made of, but they are redshifted because they're shifted down in frequency.
So that's what you're saying is that the absorption lines happen at the source. That's why you can tell they're redshifted.
Yeah, that's what I am saying. Yeah. So whatever constitutes the body emitting the light, it's not going to emit as strongly those frequencies which it's made of because they're resonating to that frequency. So they're not really. It's all the other noise that's coming this way.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand it. I could be totally wrong about that.
No, I think you're right. They have to be assuming it's being absorbed at the source and then it's shifted down.
Right. That's why they're saying the star's made of hydrogen and helium and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're the black lines. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And I should look into that more, but I remember them giving a little presentation on it at the Perot Museum, and I didn't really get it that time. But now I think I get it, and I'm probably wrong, so I should go check that.
But yeah, space isn't empty, so there's got to be.
There would be other absorption, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would it be as
Prominent.
as prominent?
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of that light's escaping, right? But it's a dark line. It's not
Yeah.
totally black. You know, there's not no light coming at the frequency of hydrogen. It's just dark compared to the other light.
Assuming the sun's atmosphere is made mostly of hydrogen.
Yeah, and whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned about redshift, and this is why because we were asking before, well, how do they know what the frequency of the damn light is, right?
Yeah. It's all
It's
free.
emanating from the star, right? How do they know what it is originally?
Yeah.
Well, that's how they are assuming that they know what it is originally.
Yeah.
It's not so much the light that's being emitted, it's the stuff that's not being emitted. The small areas that are not really being emitted from the star and traveling this great distance that are redshifted.
Yeah.
So it's a little tricky. It's the dark parts in the spectrum that are redshifted.
Yeah.
Right, because the
So then
stars.
how do you have something that's highly redshifted that's closer to us than some other object?
This is what I was getting into about expansion and
The expansion has to be happening at the source in that case too.
expansion and compression of redshift. No. Okay, so this is the spectrography idea, right? This is I'm saying that absorption is at the source, right? But that the redshift happens doesn't necessarily mean it's accelerating away from us, which would cause the Doppler effect.
No, I mean the redshift, whatever's causing the redshift has to be at the source as well. Otherwise it would be redshifting whatever's behind it is also. Right?
Because of the rapidly
Whatever effect
expanding,
whatever effect was causing the redshift of this object.
Yeah, if it was external,
Yeah.
what you're saying, it would be redshifting what the
thing
light
that's
that was
behind
coming
it. Yeah,
through
so
it.
otherwise it must be taking place at the source.
That's a good point. This is why I haven't worked it out yet. So this is what I'm
not saying-
This
I
is
still
part of
think
the
you're-
question, though.
Well, I still think your idea is correct. I mean, you've kind of told me, you've kind of run the idea past me, and I still think you're correct.
How would you describe the idea?
Well, which one are you going to say? Now I'm wondering what you're talking about.
So if space is highly compressed in these gravity wells, space and time,
Yeah.
highly compressed in the gravity well,
That's where the redshift
right?
takes place.
And there's expansion happening everywhere where that's far away from a gravity well. All this emptiness out there. There's
Yeah.
all this rapid expansion of space, but we don't really notice it here. nearby. It's subtle enough to where we're not noticing the distance between Earth and the sun growing extremely rapidly.
So the redshift takes place in the compression, not the expansion.
Perhaps.
That's
right.
what
Because
what
the
I'm
light
saying.
has to leave the compressed area and then enter this expanded area
Right.
between where there's no
And
galaxies.
the expanded
no
area
stars.
would be outside the source,
right.
which means it would be redshifting the thing with behind it. But since it's not,
Okay,
the
I
redshift
see what you're saying.
That's what I mean.
So then we were talking about Halt and Arp, finding these strange galaxies where there's like sort of two galaxies. One of them is obviously in front of the other one. They're connected by some weird filament.
Yeah.
But this one that seems to be in front of the other one is
Massively
massively redshifted, whereas the one that looks to be behind it and still connected by a long filament is less redshifted. So how, he's ignored at this point.
Yeah.
But the big question is, how is this possible if it's due
About
to-
acceleration and Doppler.
if
Yeah.
it's about acceleration due to the vast distance between the observer and the source of the light?
Right.
And the
In
reason,
other words, if redshift is an indication of distance between the observer and the light, higher the redshift, the higher the distance. Then you can't have a massively redshifted object, obviously visually in front of a less redshifted object.
right? But if the redshift is, like Halt and Arp said, sort of intrinsic to, not so much the matter itself, but the
Whatever
area,
process is
the
happening
source
with the
near.
object, yeah.
Okay, so that gravity well, where there's this extremely high, let's say that the closer galaxy in this scenario has like ridiculously extremely high compressed space-time.
Yeah.
The light leaving it perhaps would
It's
be
already redshifted.
already redshifted by the
Yeah.
time it gets out into the expanded area
Exactly.
of space.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that if space is expanding everywhere, it's got to be compressing somewhere else. I like that symmetry.
The symmetry.
Right? I just want that to be true, and so I'm trying to make it true.
Well, supersymmetry
It's
is
I'm not being a very good scientist, but I'm trying to figure out how could this be a possibility, right? And I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Especially-
symmetrical stuff is, cosmologically speaking, and mathematically especially, symmetry is necessary. Otherwise, stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
Everything has to equal zero eventually.
Which is another problem. This is what they're struggling with dark energy, is that in the complete and total vacuum of space, there seems to be
A positive.
a net positive energy,
Yeah.
which doesn't make any sense and doesn't seem to be very symmetrical to them. It's like,
Yeah.
if it was zero, that's the ultimate symmetry,
Right.
right? There's it's just none, right? But instead there's some, and it varies.
Right. So there's some other symmetry that accounts for that.
Exactly. So this is part of that idea that and this kind of ties into the elastic universe hypothesis, which states that there is a all-permeating medium that is able to be resonated, that can compress and expand, and that gravity is a function of this of resonant standing wave frequencies, like very, very similar to cymatics. If you want to see a two-dimensional representation of this idea, look at cymatics and the effect it has on materials that are placed on the resonating plate. They coalesce at areas where there is lower energy, less vibration. So
We actually have a cymatics demonstration on our YouTube channel, which I have been working on, and episode 80 with all this, with the slideshow of all the pics is uploaded there, thanks to History Shift.
yep.
So you can go, if you go check out our YouTube channel, Brothers of the Serpent on YouTube, we have an old video on there.
Yeah, we need to do a new experiment with it.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of stuff I did after that point, using combinations of liquid and granulated solids
That are still unknown.
yeah, some kind of weird whatever. Got it from GMA's grandfather's garage. I don't know what it was,
Yeah,
but it was
nobody knows
awesome.
what they were, but they were badass.
But yeah, so the basic idea of elastic universe is that there is this all-permeating field or medium that is elastic in nature, and it can resonate, and that is what causes the phenomenon of gravity. That is what causes the collection of matter in these gravity wells. The gravity wells exist no matter if there's matter there or not. The matter collects into the gravity well, and that's what we notice. So the stronger the gravity well, the more matter there's going to be there after so many billions of years.
Yeah.
And then there will be some places where there are extremely massive gravity wells, or maybe multiple trillions and trillions of small ones, where there is no matter because all the matter fell into the bigger ones that are elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that is what scientists have detected as dark matter, is these gravity wells that don't have enough stuff in them to really show us that there's anything there.
Yeah.
But that is due to the resonant quality of the whole medium itself. Now I'm sort of shifting this idea to space-time itself is that medium. And it is resonating. And nobody knows why. We can't detect it, really. We can't measure space. We can measure distances between space, but we can't measure the fabric itself of space-time.
We can't detect the fabric of space-time.
Right. What is it made of? We don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
Made
very
of space
similar.
and time. Come on, guy.
Yeah, it's made of space and time. That's right.
I think space and time are probably, just like everything
Yes.
else we see from this, is an effect of the whatever it is, right? In other words, that like just like every other way we look for this thing, we're looking at effects
That's right.
from it, and so
Absolutely.
space and time are probably also effects of it.
Could be, yeah. But the cool thing about LIGO is that they did verify in their experiment that when extremely powerful gravitational fields collide with technically no matter in them, doesn't need matter, doesn't matter. Matter doesn't matter in this scenario. Gravity wells collide with each other. The big enough ones can create these ripples, right? Now, the ripples or waves that this thing detected, the wavelength was like 1/100th of the diameter of a proton.
Yeah.
It's a trillion times higher frequency, or a trillion times smaller wavelength than the light frequency of the laser they were using to detect it.
Yeah, it's really small.
It's extremely high frequency. So LIGO could not detect some of the supermassive black holes collisions. Like the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy is like 4 million solar masses or something,
Yeah.
and the one in the Andromeda galaxy is like 400 million
Yeah.
solar masses.
And they found
something
ones
like
that are ridiculously like 10 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those things would collide, or and they probably are. They're probably binary systems in some cases, and they collide, or there's multiple smaller ones that are colliding and doing whatnot, and they're creating these gravitational wave fluctuations of space and time, compressed, rarefied space and time that are passing by us, and we cannot detect them because in many cases they would be
long.
wavelengths far too long, to where like this, they could be hours and hours and hours long, perhaps days.
But
Who
since
knows?
it's space time that's being fluctuated, time is also being fluctuated.
That's right.
Yeah.
But our experience of it,
Yeah.
right? It's relative to us. We don't notice. That's the weird thing about it.
But it would be cool if he did.
It'd be cool. Yeah. Look, I just built a detector there. Gravitational wave, bro.
Yeah. There's a gravitational wave coming. Everybody get behind something.
That's right.
Oh, man.
All right, so just
See that again, super slow mo.
it's just super cool to me to think about space-time compression. Like everybody's always talking about expansion of space. I hear that all the time in the physics world, right?
Yeah.
All these physicists talking about expanding space. How come they're not talking about compressed space? Well, this guy, Kip Thorne, mentioned it in one little sentence describing the quote-unquote ripples. Well, they're not really ripples.
Yeah.
Compressed space-time.
Yeah.
I was like, yes!
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole, like, black holes are just highly compressed space time. Right?
Yeah.
It's not really matter.
Right. So it can be done. And this is a possible, to me, I think of, so Feynman gave an idea, like it's this simple diagram that Feynman was talking about how to detect gravitational waves. And he's like, you just take a stick and you just put some beads on the stick. The stick's too rigid to fluctuate to the gravitational waves, but the beads can move along the stick. with a little bit of friction.
Stand down or
So he puts a
die.
detector there on the temperature of the stick. And when the gravitational waves go by, the stick will warm up a little bit because the beads are moving. That's how you detect gravitational waves in the Stone Age.
That's right. Primitive technology, guys.
It's freaking awesome. But the idea is that rigid structures of matter.
Don't be doing your abacus math when the gravitational waves come by. Totally screw up your math. Completely mess up your accounting there.
But yeah, the idea is that these rigid structures of matter, crystalline forms and whatnot, will not fluctuate when this space-time compression is passing them. There's too much inertia, perhaps, something like that. But massless particles will.
Yeah.
Right? Massless things will fluctuate. So it's interesting that what if there was a sustained space-time wind, right? Just hauling ass past you. Eventually, your inertia might catch up to it,
Yeah.
right? And that you would feel as acceleration.
Yeah.
And that might be the force of gravity, is what I'm suggesting.
Right.
And that would be cool as shit. So the idea is that at the center of the gravitational well, or the gravity well, space-time is actually expanding outward all the time. And then into the voids between these gravity wells. So there's almost like a turbulence going on.
Yeah. That makes sense. So what's the source of is it just a compression? Why is it compressed in there? Don't know yet.
No freaking idea.
Or is space actually being created in the well?
Perhaps. I don't know.
Or coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't know. Totally no idea. But just the idea of what's happening to space if all it's doing is expanding. Where's it coming from?
Yeah. No one knows.
Where was it highly compressed to be expanded?
It was highly compressed in the singularity.
In the early universe?
Yeah.
The Big Bang?
The proto-singularity or whatever.
But how can it be expanding
It's still expanding.
everywhere, right? In other words, like if you took a balloon and then you instant elsewhere the rubber around the compressed air in the balloon,
Or die.
at the center of the air, it wouldn't begin expanding until the air on the outsides started moving away far enough to where the air closer towards the inside could then begin to move away. And then
The singularity, whatever it was, the Big Bang itself, there was no space. Just like any singularity. It had no space. But its own... I mean, nobody knows, but the point is that they call it the expanding... The Big Bang expansion was the period, very short period after it happened, where space and time and all the laws of the physical universe and all matter and existence came into being all at once and just sort of ballooned outwards and
right.
very quickly. It's still doing it very slowly now, relatively speaking,
Right.
but supposedly it's still happening. That's the idea, roughly. But the expansion part was violent and incredibly energetic. Like an early expansion, there was so much energy in the entire universe because it was so small.
The tricky thing about it is that no matter where we look, we notice the same relative redshift based on.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that if I was at near the center of an explosion, for example, right, and like me and my arm are flying out from the center of the explosion.
Yeah.
I'm moving further away from the objects on the other side of the center of the explosion at a faster rate than I am from my arm that's traveling with me but slightly moving to my left.
Yes, definitely.
So I should be able to look at certain directions of the universe and say, those objects are not... that object over there is just as far away as this one over here, but this one is accelerating away from me way faster than that one and all those objects over there. But we don't notice that. We look every direction. And they're all freaking accelerating away. They're accelerating away from us all at the same rate.
Well, no.
No, I mean, yeah, I guess we're measuring the distance. So we're using the redshift, which is...
Right, the farther away something is, the faster away it is moving away from us, which is how that fits with that explosion.
But my point is that I should be able to look in a different direction and see something that's just as far away as this other thing, but it should be moving away from me way faster than this one. But they're the same distance apart
From each other?
from me. Like there would be
How does that
areas. There would be areas.
In any expanding cloud of explode, like just a shell, any given point, the closer something is to you, the slower it's going away from you. And the farther away it is, the faster it goes away from you until you get all the way around. Right?
But if let's say I look directly towards the center of the explosion,
yeah.
and there's an object there that's however far away from me,
Yeah.
then I look at a right angle to another object that's the same distance away. Which one would be accelerating away from me faster at a greater rate?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, it doesn't hold up under that. Like you have to be looking at it as a shell. If you're looking through the center of the explosion, you have to look all the way to the other side of the shell. So that thing's moving away from you really fast. I see what you're saying, though.
Right, but
Something that's still close to but there's nothing close to the center anymore after something blows up. Everything is
yeah, I know.
in the shell.
I guess my point is that it doesn't matter which direction you look, and this is probably fundamentally flawed due to the fact that we measure distance by redshift.
Yeah.
But you could say pretty much every object that we can see that's 4 billion light years away is all redshifted about the same amount, right?
Yeah.
They're all traveling away from us at the same speed, no matter which direction we look. Every object,
Stand down.
freaking 100 or however many thousands of billions of light years away or whatever it is. I don't know what's the furthest thing we've ever noticed.
Yeah.
Probably not that much.
No. 14 billion years
14 billion.
is the age of the universe. So I think
Yeah.
the oldest thing, farthest thing away we've seen is like 8.
Yeah. Okay. So, however far, like something that's closer, it doesn't matter which direction you look, it's redshifted the same.
Yeah, for the same distance. Yeah.
Or is that the way we're measuring distance? So we just
don't
that's what
know.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's where the argument is flawed because
And we're assuming that the distance has to do with
it's the redshift,
and the redshift has to do with
expanding space.
with motion away from us. Right.
But they're also saying that the expansion is accelerating.
Right.
It's just freaking confusing.
Yeah. I mean, the redshift has to do with velocity. I'm sorry, not acceleration. Right. So the redshift is the velocity traveling away from you.
Yeah.
According to the model. The redshift is caused by whatever velocity it has in moving away from you. And supposedly, except for the stuff Art found, the farther away something is, they're guessing
Stand down or die.
it's farther away because it's got a higher velocity moving away from us.
But they're also saying that it's actually accelerating. There's a greater acceleration
Yeah.
the further away it is.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense in the explosion idea, especially in every direction.
Well, nothing can be accelerating after the explosion's over, unless there's something else happening. The explosion causes the velocity, and then after that, everything is slowing down, right? No matter what. Nothing is accelerating after the explosion is ended. Unless there's secondary forces at work, right? So the acceleration itself is anomalous in terms of the Big Bang, because it cannot be the Big Bang itself causing the accelerations.
This is why
why they
dark
think-
energy comes into play.
That's why they think it's expanding. Yeah, it's
like they're saying that
same things seem to be accelerating away from us, not just moving away from us at velocity.
and the greater distance they are from us,
the higher
greater the acceleration
right.
is.
And they theorize because that's means there's more empty space in between us and them, and the space itself is expanding.
It's exactly
And that
what
cannot be because of the initial Big Bang.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right. That's
And
what I'm
if
saying.
it-
So it falls apart in the whole shell idea because like an explosion has only the initial explosion, and unless there are secondary explosions or whatever that continue to accelerate things away, you don't have any more acceleration after the initial explosion. So yeah, that's where the problem comes in.
Right. So how is all this space expanding? Is my big question.
Yeah, I mean, they used to have the idea of the big crunch, that that all big bangs would end in big crunches, that Because eventually the gravity of if the only accelerated force, let me try that again. Accelerated force was caused by the Big Bang itself. Then just the gravity of everything should slow
Slowly
everything down, and
coalesce.
then eventually it should all come back together.
Right.
The big crunch.
That's not what we're noticing.
Right. No, everything is accelerating farther and farther apart. So now they're talking about the heat death of the universe. That,
Right. The ultimate entropy.
yeah.
Everything began with an extremely high order, and it's slowly been turning into chaos ever since.
But the heat death of the universe is how we get Boltzmann brains.
All right, we got to take another break. And we're back. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast in the highly accelerated tangent cube of science. Trying to figure out why we are sitting on the floor. Doesn't make any sense, damn it.
Yeah, Watcher, go ahead and keep your mic on for this last segment. We're just we were having a three-person snake discussion going around and around and around and around and around and around, and around in circles on this whole gravity and physics things, and we just want to go ahead and keep doing that for this last segment. I think it's good.
Stand down or die.
So you were basically asking
Do that.
if this is any way similar to the excuse me, to the elastic universe theory, and it is kind of right. Isn't that what you were asking?
Yeah, so like I remember when we first brought up the gravitational waves being sensed article. Since then, to me, there have been a lot of similarities. And at first, regrettably now, the majority of my comments on it were making fun of them because space-time was totally like the same thing as the ether used in the original elastic universe hypothesis. And I was like, just because you guys decided to call it a different name doesn't mean you're not doing the same thing. But it's very interesting to me how this all correlates. And also, regrettably, I would say out of the three of us, I feel like I understand this the least. But
I don't know.
but the thing that I like the most about
And you probably understand it the most.
Yeah, there you go.
But every time that we do delve into this, and and Kyle really starts to expand on his ideas with the physics of the universe like this, I feel like I get a little bit more of it each time.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Well, so what you had asked originally, I don't remember the exact question, but it kind of led me to a better, I think,
Something about bed sheets.
more succinct way to say that. So, like, if we're thinking about the universe, like the idea of the Big Bang. So one way to think of it is that space-time was a singularity, right?
Yeah.
And that when this Big Bang happens, like explodes and it's all moving out, like one way to look at it, the singularity is that all of space and time is compressed in that.
Yes. So it has to be able to be compressed.
It has to be able to be compressed. So then as it expands, like what if it expands out in this resonant pattern, right? Where there are these pockets of highly compressed space-time and they're moving away from each other as they're also decompressing. So it's almost like scientists say that space is expanding out there everywhere. When they look out, and my point is the only way they notice it is because they're looking across these vast distances, right? These vast areas of space-time to another area that is highly compressed. So these like galaxy clusters are moving apart from each other at a greater rate than the galaxies within the clusters are moving apart from each other.
Yeah.
So they're all of the like those galaxy clusters is just all in and of itself an extremely highly compressed area of space-time.
Stand down or die.
And all of that space-time is like outgassing everywhere around it. And all of these galaxy clusters are doing that, so they're moving apart from each other, or appear to be, due to that decompression. So really the expansion, I would say that the greatest rate of expansion is happening in the gravity well.
Yeah.
It's just still highly compressed. So if you imagine the once again the air tank, and you poke that hole, right outside the hole, the air is almost the same.
Yeah, it's just beginning its decompression.
It's just
still-
beginning its decompression. It's highly accelerated.
Yeah.
But as you move away from the hole and get further and further away from the compressed area, it's more and more expanded. Right? So it's still actually expanding out from the hole at the same rate of the expansion far away from the hole. It's just not noticeable to us in that short distance.
Yeah.
So looking out away from our galaxy, we don't really notice it very much until we see another galaxy way over there.
Yeah.
And then we're like, damn, we're moving apart from each other. We appear to be moving apart from each other at a
Yeah.
accelerating rate.
Well, and the other, well, I mean, not to take this in a totally different direction. I mean,
No, please do.
I am, but the other interesting aspect of this is the time part, and you know, just like there are these effects in the macrocosmic sense where we can really see these big structures, and you know,
Yeah.
and you imagine that they are some kind of. If we go with the Big Bang and then we say that, okay, so galaxy cluster, these even bigger than that, just these enormous macro structures in the universe are if we knew how to do it, we could roll them all the way back to the beginning of the universe and see how they started out as very small but compact structures in the
Yeah.
initial expansion, right? So you end up with basically the idea of a vortex, basically some kind of, you know, I mean, a vortex is not exactly what it is, but you end up with this idea of these, like a big whirlpool,
Filaments of-
and these little whirlpools that come off of it, and
Yeah.
right. Well, you got time involved in this too, and I'm interested in the idea that of anomalous phenomena and the idea of like little weird time vortexes. I mean, people talk about this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Well, we just detected space-time vortexes that passed us
Yeah.
with the LIGO experiment, okay? Like,
right.
they had basically like they've got these lasers, and they noticed the lasers getting closer and then further apart, essentially, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Well, they were also getting closer to each other in time and further
Yeah.
apart in time.
Yeah.
So this is actually happening, and they can't. In order to build a detector big enough to detect like the really massive ones that might actually really affect our perception in ways that we can't know because it's relative, they would have to have something that they can shoot these lasers across the solar system or whatever. They have to be vast distances,
Yeah.
and they have to be far away from all the noisemakers like the sun.
Right, but those are enormous effects. I'm talking about. I mean, the wavelengths are tiny, right? But I mean, like,
Well, you can have okay,
what I mean is something very compact and concentrated.
like a laser.
Yeah, but like a time vortex that's like this, that could snatch a single person and just, you know,
Space-time amplification by stimulated emission of something. Space something.
a spacer.
Space what?
Space what? Yeah. Well, I just mean like, you know, the Bermuda Triangle, so just this strange anomalous phenomena that happen, and you know, some of them these are vortex places. This is what people call them, right? So I was just thinking about that and how there are places where there are these concentrated effects.
Yeah. So you can imagine that, like, in the gravity well, where, like, I'm thinking of it as this sort of mathematical point where
Yeah.
the space is just ridiculously compressed, similar to that of the early universe, and it's hauling ass out.
Yeah.
Well, there might be inconsistencies. It's not going to be perfectly uniform.
Yeah.
So you might have patterns in the rate of expansion around the sphere
Yeah.
So that places like the Bermuda Triangle and that other place that's on the opposite side of the world that also has strange things might be areas
Dragon's
where it's
Triangle.
not quite doing it the same way, or it fluctuates massively.
Yeah.
And then other areas of the world, it's fairly normal.
Right. And that you have higher and lower incidences of it taking place depending on where the other planets are and what the sun's doing, because they're also outgassing space.
Yeah.
Like, what happens if you take two pressure tanks and they both have a hole in them and you face the holes roughly towards each other? You end up with a freaking tornado in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So you have the right circumstances, some of these effects are amplified, and then you get these tiny, really powerful pocket vortexes that can just
Create deja vu or something
Yeah.
in your perception.
or whisk you away into whatever, the next 100 years, or you end up with Rip Van Winkle stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. We should write a science fiction novel. So another problem that I wanted to touch on that you reminded me of is that when we're measuring, like with these thought experiments, for example, to explain relativity, they use like one of them is the guy traveling with the mirrors or something, right?
Yeah.
And the two mirrors are facing each other and they're perfect mirrors and they're traveling at light speed to the right.
Yeah.
Or they're one's on top, one's on bottom, and they're a light year apart. They're traveling to the right
Yeah.
at light speed.
Yeah.
And there's a guy on the top mirror, and he shines his light down to the bottom mirror. It takes 1 year to get down there
To him. Yeah.
to him, and then 1 year to get back.
Yeah.
So he sees it happen in 2 years.
Right, because relative to him, the mirrors aren't moving.
Right.
Because they're all moving
They
at
just
light
saw, but they're all moving at the speed of light or close to it.
speed. Yeah.
In a
In a
and then there's a
formation.
guy that's relative to those guys not moving.
Yeah.
He sees the beam of light
Take 4
hit
years.
basically he sees it hit the mirror and go back up, and it takes quite a bit longer because it has to move at this angle, these diagonal angles. So he sees this large V shape of the light. The problem with that, well, okay, the point is that to him it takes longer.
Right.
Right. This is the relative to your speed.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is we cannot see the light's wavefront. We cannot monitor the very wavefront of the light as it travels down to the bottom mirror and then back
Right.
up. We can only monitor it with a detector where it hits it.
Yeah.
So like the mirror could be the detector, so you mark the 1 year when it hits the mirror,
Yeah.
and then you mark the 2 year when it hits the other mirror. But you can't follow the wavefront of the light to see if it actually changes speed through
Right.
the process.
But let's say that the mirrors could send a signal to the guy who's stationary. It would be 4 years because they move a light year away from him,
That's right.
and then the signal will now take a year to get to him.
That's right. But the idea is that as you accelerate, so we're still assuming this guy and these mirrors are moving
Yeah.
close to the speed of light.
Yeah.
Well, as you accelerate, your mass increases,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if he's moving and the mirrors are moving close to the speed of light, their mass is incredible.
Yeah. That's
So
why
that-
it's a thought experiment.
So that, well, yeah, but the idea is that if their mass is incredible, what's going to also be incredible? Their
The inertia?
their gravity.
yeah. Yeah.
And so if gravity is actually an effect
Of mass.
of in other words, once again we go back to if the gravity is due to this rapidly expanding space-time or highly compressed area of space-time in the gravity well, then the two mirrors and the guy are going to be highly compressed areas of space-time in order to have that quote-unquote mass
Yeah.
and that gravitational field.
Right.
So that we can actually monitor what's happening since space-time is going to be expanding out away from these things rapidly. What happens to the speed of light as it to the stationary observer as it leaves the one gravity well of the guy in his mirror and moves down to a light year away to the next gravity well of the other mirror? You see what I'm saying? We can only time it when it gets there to the detector.
Right. That's why it's a thought experiment. It's supposed to demonstrate how they think relativity works. You can't actually do it, really.
You can't do it. That's my point. That, in other words, we cannot tell that the speed of light is constant by monitoring its actual speed.
Right.
We can only monitor where it left and where it got to and how much time.
Yeah.
So there's no telling if the light leaving a star, that incredible gravity well, in that highly compressed space-time, is actually traveling at the quote-unquote constant speed. What if it is traveling much slower as it leaves, but then as it enters the empty space, or the very highly expanded space that's empty between the two stars, it actually goes way freaking faster.
Yeah.
And then once it comes into our gravity well near our sun, it slows back down to 186,000 miles per second.
Right.
Because our sun's pretty close to the same as that star over there.
Right. That's one idea of how travel between stars may not be that big of a deal.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
Yeah. Once you get out.
And you
on the
pointed
influence
out
part, yeah.
that what were you saying about the probe?
Oh, that the Voyager probes are experiencing anomalous acceleration, and they're leaving the vicinity of our solar system. Finally.
Bam.
Yeah. They have the
Theory is
Voyager
correct.
probes have not. Next theory. The Voyager probes have not been accelerating for a very long time, and yet they are accelerating away from us.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, there's an anomalous acceleration of the Voyager probes as they leave the solar system. So,
That
All we
reminds
have to
me-
do is launch something else towards the edge of the solar system and wait like 30 years.
That reminds me of the cigar object that came in and then now it's accelerating up.
yeah, Oumuamua.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or however you say it. The long.
Yeah, the cigar.
Yeah. Yeah. Came from Cuba. It's a big deal.
Came from Cuba Centauri 411156.
Cuba Centauri. Yeah. Yeah, so it's accelerating, but I think it started accelerating a lot sooner than the Voyager probes, but
Yeah.
who knows why.
I was just really wanting to point out that we can't really observe what the light is actually doing
While it's doing it.
while it's doing it. That's right. We cannot do that. So it just, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, the rate that it travels could change due to expanded or compressed areas of space-time.
Yeah.
And it probably does.
Yeah. I mean, like,
Especially since those lasers are fluctuating due to the expanding and compressed space-time that's passing them. I mean, there's an experiment that's showing it, that it is highly affected
yeah.
by it. So
Well, and there's that whole thing that Sheldrake found when you went to figure out about the constant of speed of
Too
light.
heavy.
That all over the world, laboratories that were measuring the speed of light all the time detected a 40 meter per second drop in the speed of light all over the world, and it stayed like that for 20 years, and then it went back up. Or
yeah.
something like that.
And then we have black holes, right?
And it sounds like we passed through an area of space that was different than the one we were in.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That. Forgot about that.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's that we spent 20
Forgot all about that. Hell yes.
We spent 20 years moving through an area of space that had a completely different compression or rarefaction or whatever than the.
space-time.
Yeah.
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 And then did you ever check on the
I
atomic
saw-
clocks in space?
Watcher?
I did not manage to find anything,
Oh, okay.
but
Because I know they
Yeah, they have
go
to
at a
be
different rate.
correct. Things have to be
They
corrected.
have to be calibrated because
Yeah.
they go at a different speed, at
Yeah.
a different rate.
Yeah. You want to
Than the
know
ones
if
on
it's
Earth.
faster or slower? That's
Yeah.
the idea. Neither. If you're up there, it's the same speed.
Yeah, that's right. But it does something weird to your telomeres. We know that.
Yeah.
Damn atomic clocks.
Turns on your freaking space jeans.
So I don't know. I'll keep.
So the thing about let's keep going with this. Like with the ancient stuff, like we have people who lived a very long time in the ancient period, like in a totally different quote unquote sun, right?
Yeah.
So you have ancient peoples who talked about different suns or regimes of gods, right? So different suns or regimes. So you have a different sun after, and there's some kind of cataclysm, something, and Shock thinks that it's solar induced.
Yeah.
So the sun changes, goes through a violent phase, and then changes to something else quickly.
Yeah.
You know, and that ties into Electric Universe. There's something weird happening there, right? It
Yeah.
electrically becomes something vastly different,
And
and then
there's-
all of a sudden, time and space are totally different here.
Yeah, and there's these ideas that the solar system might go through these crazy, weird rearrangements, right?
Yeah.
And this is the weird thing. I was listening to a podcast today, and this guy's cosmologist or whatever, is talking about how, or a physicist or something. He's talking about how, like, oh yeah, these cosmologists and physicists have kind of figured out, like, well, actually Jupiter like traveled in real close, and then Saturn and interacted, and then they moved back out. But this was like billions of years.
Right,
ago,
right,
you know,
right,
it's
right, right.
it's weird. It's like the same stuff Velikovsky was talking about.
Yeah,
They're
but
like,
it's not.
no,
It's totally not.
yeah. But so that okay. So if the force of gravity is a phenomenon created by this expansion of space time, and then we come close to, say, like let's say we are a binary system.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some
Dark star out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we get close to it, or a period there where we get close to it. Well, they're going, like, I guess no matter how you look at it, if their rate of expanding space-time changes due to the fact they're close to each other and they're both trying to get rid of it, then we would feel there would be weird gravitational effects, right? And I mean, you can look at that either way, just with normal gravity. There would be all kinds of weird gravitational effects. It would rearrange all kinds of shit.
Yep. Tilt everything's axes.
Okay. So, clocks on the ISS are automatically calibrated to match GPS time. They did send an atomic clock up. It's recording data. They haven't published anything on that yet, but they calibrate to GPS time because synchronization for communication, payload, stuff like that, they have to have the same time on the space station as they do on Earth. Otherwise, it'll screw up their measurements.
Right, and GPS satellites have to be calibrated to Earth.
Right, and they're constantly recalibrated every time a signal's sent.
Right, so the question is which direction are they having to be calibrated? Forward or
They're having to be calibrated. The time is moving faster on the International Space Station.
Okay. So the clock is moving quicker there.
Right.
Okay.
So they, relative to people down on Earth, age slower. I think. Or vice versa. One or the other.
That's the problem I'm having with my brain right now.
So what does that mean? Yeah. So if the clocks are moving faster on the thing, then that means more time is passing out in space, out of the gravity belt.
Which is exactly what would happen if you're like, in other words, they're looking at us and they're like, they don't seem to be moving as fast as they were when we were down on Earth.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you would happen in a massive effect if you went around the black hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
So that's correct. Like that.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
that's
They're traveling into the future.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Okay.
no. We are. They're getting old faster.
Right.
Okay.
Even though
There
they're
you go.
not, because their telomeres are getting longer.
That's right.
Probably to counteract
Their
that
space
effect.
genes to counteract the. Put divots in the rivets with my physical arm. Space genes. I'm gonna punch you in the space genes.
I'm gonna black hole your genes.
Spaghettify your genes.
Yeah, so I like the idea of this. I mean, like, you know, if you guys have ever looked into, what are they called? There's a name for it. Time something. Time, not time warps, but like where people seem to, for a very brief period of time, see into another time, but not go there, right? Like people will see things that happened a long time ago in that same spot for a brief period. They may explain hauntings in some way, right?
Yeah.
The kind of hauntings where it seems to be like somebody's like the ghost, quote unquote ghost, is just doing the same actions over and over at a specific period, right? So the idea of, like, you know, the classic haunted house story where every night at 3:30 in the morning, one of the dining room chairs slides away from the table, and then a door shuts down the hall, and then that happens every night at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's some kind of weird time loop vortex thing happening there. It's not a ghost, right? It's a reenactment of a specific period of time where something weird happened at that point when those things took place, and now it's going around because it's going around and around and around and around in some way. But there are other stories where people, like, none of these are confirmed. They're all anecdotal.
Yeah.
Obviously, nothing like this has ever been scientifically recorded. But like people have seen, entire battles take place that happened at that spot that they knew that was a historical battle, and then they see part of it happen.
Or they just hear like the cannon and artillery fire.
Yeah. Or they see marching soldiers on the road that were, wearing conquistador type stuff or whatever, in Europe. Or there was one from Australia where I think it was in Sydney where like they were on some kind of tour, and the guy steps out into the street. Him and his wife step out into something like this. Don't quote me on the details, but they basically step out into the street. And when they looked one way down the street, they saw like horse and buggy and like very early model cars, and almost Victorian era style buildings and everything. And on the other end, it was all present day stuff, and it happened for a couple of seconds and then it stops, right? Like things like that.
Oh, or like you're entering a national park and you hear a car horn.
Yeah, from 50 years past. I recognized it. It was from a Buick 8.
That was a great book. It was very scary. Yeah, like that kind of stuff is, and people can get caught up in those things. And I mean, like even space-time sort of stuff, like, space anomalies, like they're the weird ones where people's footprints just stop, like they just, and then parts of them are found up in trees, like not them, but their clothes or whatever found high up in trees and stuff. Like they just got rocketed upwards somehow. And there's a very strange story of a guy who
I think there's a way to do it.
Do what?
Create that anti-gravity engine.
Yeah.
As I think it's really important to think about the possibilities of like how it works.
Yeah.
Sorry to change the subject,
No,
but
I
up
totally
into the
agree.
tree.
I totally agree that there's some kind of
I believe these things could happen naturally, due to some strange thing. I mean, we don't really nobody knows what gravity is.
yeah.
And we're only barely scratching the surface of like what else it can do.
Yeah.
And the LIGO experiment proves that.
Yep.
I mean, Einstein predicted it, right?
Right.
But we don't really know the full ramifications of that prediction
Yeah.
and what else could be going on. So it's cool to think in different terms, even if they're wrong. It's fun to do the thought experiment because it makes you think about a different type of engine. What type of engine might do something with the accelerating space-time, might interact with it in a way that
Yeah.
negates it so that you don't fall towards the center,
Yeah.
like a shield.
Right.
Blocks it so that you can fly off the planet, right? Like you should be doing because it's spinning really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Mercury vortex type things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do something with matter because we know matter interacts with it.
Yeah.
Do something
With a
unique with matter and crystals and whatever.
Right.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah. And if you need to turn a crystal into a vortex, well, the only way you can do that if liquid, and the only liquid crystal we know of is mercury.
Yeah. And maybe that's what that copper thing that Watcher, you're always obsessing over that engine that has a tiny little bit of thrust. Maybe all it's doing is creating rapidly expanding space-time out the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally.
Or out the other
possible.
end. And so
Yeah.
it's actually pushing it the wrong way that you would think if it was shoving space-time
It's
out
creating lift.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. By generating space-time.
And they can put it in all the Faraday cages and everything that they want, and it still does it
Yeah.
because it's manipulating space-time.
Right. Yeah.
That totally makes sense. By the way, guys, if you ever want to know how gravity works, ask a Scriptard.
What is that thing called, Brett? The Magna something or other.
What?
That engine.
Oh.
It's got Magna.
It's this massless thruster or something like that, space thruster.
Microwave.
Yeah, microwave something or other. Magnet.
It's the microwave copper bell thingy. All right, Watcher. Well, while you're finding that, we're going to go ahead and run through our end of the show here. I think we're done with this show. I think that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For me, I got to sit here and listen about space. It's like, I need some space on this show.
All right.
Give me some space. Just give me some space, buddy.
The only name I can find for it is RF resonant cavity thruster, which is something that somebody must have made up recently.
Okay.
Because I really don't remember it being called that.
It's called the reactionless drive. Is
Yeah, it's
basically-
a
okay,
zero
that's
something drive.
That's
Yeah.
what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you guys can get a hold of us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
And you should visit the website at brothersoftheserpent.com and comment there. Make sure to check out the encyclopedia and the glossary of
Yeah,
terms.
which are, you can find the links for those on the upper right of the website there.
Yeah, you'll be able to see the difference between Johnson and non-Johnson. Have you put that one up there yet?
Not yet.
You
I'm
gotta
going
do
to. Yeah, I'm going to do it. It's been vetted. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at SNKBRS, Snake Bros with no vowels.
Please share the shows. Really helps
That's right.
us out.
And don't forget to donate to our pyramid scheme. Send us straight to pyramids, and we will report back on it. The donate button is also on the upper right of the website.
And thank you everybody for the donations you have. given.
Yes, thank you guys so much for the donations.
Really makes us feel like we're doing something worthwhile. Appreciate it.
We're getting monetary.
Also, reviews. Reviews really help. If you can't donate, please give us a review.
Yes, do give us a
Even if you're trashing us. No. Don't do that.
Trash us all you want. Just give us 5 freaking stars. 5 stars. I freaking hate this podcast. And also, don't forget our brand new YouTube channel. You guys can search for us, Brothers of the Serpent, on YouTube. There's a bunch of other stuff that I posted up there, but we are getting the podcast turned into videos, and in some cases, where we have slides, they are being made into slideshows by Brandon Ricks, History Shift, which you guys could follow him on Twitter also at History Shift, and check him out on Instagram and
And his YouTube.
And his YouTube, yeah. And I just did the narration for his second Recat Structure is Not Atlantis video. So, so go check those out. Those are really good. They're like 7 minutes long, and both of them, because the really popular YouTube guy, which I respect for a lot of the stuff he does, but he came out with Atlantis is totally the Recat Structure. They're both like, no, it isn't. It's totally not Recat Structure. That thing is really cool, but it's not Atlantis. Anyway, there's 2 videos on his YouTube channel about that, and he has a whole bunch of playlists on other interesting stuff, as do we. If you go to the Brothers of the Serpent YouTube, I have enormous playlists of all kinds of weird stuff. Crazy, unexplained anomalous sky booms and other sounds and just all sorts of archaeology things and everything like that. So I think that's it. We love you guys. Thank you so much for being listeners.
You guys, every one of you, so special. Think about it. The ingredients that make up your bodies were assembled in the hearts of stars over billions of years.
That's right. That's incredible.
You're all amazing people.
We are made of star stuff, and so are you guys. And I just want to say the podcast has been growing by leaps and bounds recently, so thank you guys so much for that. We have a lot more subscribers and lots of downloads, so thank you guys so much. Now, good night, Adamu. Get back to work.
I cannot do that.